conversation.
Okay, so basically what Hugo was saying, I have asked him, Daniel, what does he think about the, what Buckminster Fuller said about tools, if you want to change thinking, give them a tool and let them to sort it out, and then they'll learn, by unfolding with the tools. So my question to him was to say, what is the rule of tools right now as we face a convergence of multiple crises and superimposed by global health crisis and many, many design challenges ahead of us? What is the role of a tool before we get into the SDG flashcards and the WeLand? So maybe you want to say something about that.
Interesting. What's the rule of a tool? Well, the main thing is that the tool shouldn't rule us. That's the danger. Like the famous saying that is maybe a bit overquoted, that if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem starts looking like a nail. Does have a lot of wisdom to it. But at the same time, there's always a both and to it. Tools are extremely important. And I think what Buckminster Fuller was referring to, and I kind of used that Buckminster Fuller quote of if you want to change the way people think, give them a tool, the use of which will change the way they think, rather than telling them to think, as one of the guiding sort of themes for the designing the flashcards. And I believe it is really powerful, just as my book has 250 questions rather than lots of principles and blueprints and strategies of how to, because particularly when tools are question-based, like question-generating engines, then all that they're doing is giving people an invitation to say, you might want to check this in your situation, in your context, with your people, having listened to the place, having it tuned, and then tools are extremely useful if you hold them in that space. And that was really the intention, both of why my book has 250 questions and why the flashcards have, I think, a total of 200 questions on them.
Yes, so maybe we can start deepening a little bit more into the nature of the tools that we want to discuss today. I wonder if Hugo would like to say, because it comes from the name in itself, and thinking about, like Maturana would say, that we live in language. We are a species that language, and right now there's so much need for new narratives. Everybody's saying this is like a common, you go to meetings at the UN or tribal villages, people say, oh, we need to tell a new different way. We need a new story, new narratives. What sort of new narratives does the WeLand proposing here? And maybe Daniel can think about this as well as we go along.
So the beautiful of coincidences, like when you use a tool, like for instance, the Zoom call, sometimes it breaks out and breaks in. So for me, like so the tool, the process, process design, this collaborative process design that we called WeLand Making Sense of Place. The proposal that is that is behind it is that instead of proposing like static tools to be followed, like it's just like creating a movement. And once the movement is created, that what you get is like a pattern language of diverse tools that depending on the movement that you start dancing with the land, that you pick the appropriate tools and exercises that will deepen your perception and that will deepen your connection with land, and with the design and the co-creation that happens once we enter our perception of being nature ourselves, acting from that space. So being a pattern language, just to give you a little bit of a glimpse of what WeLand proposes, is that to follow a particular natural pattern, that is the toroidal vortex, to guide the movement, so that once it starts creating this vortex of action, that along the way, like Daniel was mentioning, you know, like you can choose like different sets of cards that are appropriate for that particular deepening of that particular phase. So basically, if you're a community catalyst, or if you're someone entering a journey of co-creating a particular piece of land, or entering an understanding of what your community is and what is the culture that emerged from that connection with land, like you can use the appropriate tool so that you don't have to hammer only nails, that you can, you know, be diversifying your set of tools according to what you find, and not getting everything looking like a nail, like you were mentioning, Daniel.
You know what? I think it's very fascinating. When I listen to you in your body language, I got this insight before passing on to Daniel that maybe these contemporary tools for regenerative development and catalysts could be even the ancient way of going to an oracle, you know, and asking questions. And you never have a direct answer from an oracle. They always have a metaphor that you bring in, depends very much on your interpretation of what is the response from the oracle. But Daniel.
Yeah, as my friend Michael Daniek used to say, the signs don't mind how we interpret them, with regard to the oracle. But no, as I was listening to Hugo, I was thinking, really, there's a whole spectrum of tools that, as on the path, that are useful depending on where you're at on the path. And in many ways, if we're today speaking about these two sets of tools, the Wieland and the SDG cards, then I would say the SDG cards are kind of entry points of conversations to an extremely wide funnel of stakeholders and rights holders, people in government, people in business, people in local community. There's this global overarching framework that allows them to be that broad of a platform of conversation. But then if I listen to the depth and the diversity of tools that WLANs offer, this is much further along the spectrum. It's almost like only if you play around with the SDG cards and you begin to value worldview and your own perception and your own role in creating reality, which for many people is still a massive step. I mean, Hugo did so many of the Gaia education courses in many parts of the world, and spent a year at Schumacher College or longer. So that inculcation of a worldview of participatory complexity and dancing with a toroidal vortex, for people who've gone through that kind of training, that's the next step, and it looks wonderful. I think the SDG cards are sort of an early entry, but already different from most ways that people deal with the SDGs, because they look at each one of the 17 SDGs through the 4 lenses of Gaia Education's 4-dimensional whole systems design curriculum. That already cognitively primes them to think about each SDG in a much more holistic way, because it would be so easy to say life on land, okay, that's ecology, tick, and not think what's the social dimension, what's the economic dimension, what's the worldview dimension with life on land. And only if you do that, you really go deep into it. And that's what the questions offer. But yeah, the kind of, well, another thing on the toroidal vortex, it's fascinating because just recently, I haven't posted it yet, I had a wonderful conversation with a guy called Alan Rayner, who used to be the external examiner on the Masters in Holistic Science at Schumacher College. And he has this dynamic worldview of natural inclusivity. And when I was talking to him, he made exactly the same movement constantly as Hugo was making. So there's a resonance pattern here. And I'll send you the link, Hugo. It's work in progress, but this looks wonderful, the tool, and I look forward to employing it here on Mallorca.
Yes. So, but Daniel, when we talk about, because we have honored the roots of the WLAND, we haven't honored the roots of the SDG flashcards. So I'll give you some space for doing that. But at the same time, when you think about, this this great insight that every SDG has a social and ecological and economic and a worldview aspect. Can you say more about that?
Well,
what do you mean by that?
Well, it's kind of remarkable to think that we've all, I mean, May, you and I have been working together for many years, and Ugo has also been in the Gaia education orbit for many, many years. And we all take it pretty much for granted that people are aware of that the way we look for answers and solutions in social, ecological, or economic dimensions of sustainability has critically to do with the story we tell about who we are, why we're here, what success, how we measure success, whether we're scientifically detached observers that only look at cold data, or whether we are engaged dynamic participants that emerge from the system and include warm data in a much more multi-sensory way of making decisions, which is what the tool that Ugo's developed clearly is inviting. And so I think it's really important to still explain that to people, that basically the expansion of the classic 3 columns of sustainability, or the 3-legged stool of sustainability, to worldview. Initially in Gaia education, we wanted to call it spirituality. We decided to call it worldview because it would trigger people less. Sometimes now you can see it when people approach the 4 dimensions, they talk about culture, which is maybe even also less triggering than worldview, but it's still inviting the same conversation. And May, this was really radical when Gaia Education did this. This was really cutting edge. This was a contribution to the international conversation around sustainability to add that. And the dance that I had with Gaia Education was that I was working on a PhD on exactly that dimension, calling it meta design, when we encountered each other around the time that Gaia Education was launched, and it's been a happy collaboration ever since. And so I think it's still at the heart of how we, I think only when you let that 4th dimension of sustainability in, are you beginning to move towards restoration and regeneration. That step into regeneration is only possible when we step into a worldview that is participatory, that acknowledge nested complexity, that understands that anything we do in a place, we do in a region, and planetary, that place is fractal, but also that we are expressions of place. And this is where deep indigenous worldview comes back in. And is honored, not copied or anything. That we, and this is very much what Hugo was speaking to when I briefly heard him on the on YouTube earlier, on Facebook, was that it's very much listening to what does the place want, what does this unique situation want, and that is a shift in worldview. So yeah, I think that we need to keep honking that horn, particularly now that more and more people see the imminent necessity for change due to climate change. The pandemic is driving it even further, and so on. That as we now say, okay, let's do this differently, we need to step back and ask that second level observer, second order science question of, say, what is the method of our observing? Because if we don't we can't include more people in the conversation, and we need a more inclusive dialogue to do this right.
And it's amazing in my work for many years with the UN, how I see the worldview playing around, because basically you're working with policies, and policies that they originate from a worldview. And as much as sometimes you want to change or go into implementation, but it springs. So worldview informs policy, that informs action on the ground, that reinforces worldview, that will generate, so disrupting that, or at least, giving a step back and say, listen, studying worldview is like putting sunglasses blue and studying the color blue. It's like you only see, there's other ways of seeing if you get out of it. So what's the role of tools for us to see that there are other possibilities than the one that I'm most identified with? Ugo.
Okay.
Or no, go for it. Whoever wants.
I go quickly, Ugo, and then I'll pass over. I think it's literally the habit of tugging on your own mask of keeping questioning.
Mm.
So in this conversation, it's the habit of, so what's the worldview that assumes that you need a whole bunch of tool in a tool belt and you need to get out with your strategy and your blueprint and scale it up? Because that's a worldview. And maybe not necessarily a bad worldview. It holds certain values. And there are other values that are saying, no, slow it down, listen to the land, don't do anything. Be humble, ask for permission of this place to even do anything. Don't assume that you are the one called to do anything here. Make sure that you're the right one to do anything in this place. Ask the elders for permission, ask the land for permission. That's what indigenous people would do. And each one of those are maybe worthy values to hold, and maybe our path into the future is a dilemma navigation between those. So for me, the very habit of asking, like stopping and questioning one's own assumptions, one's own patterns, simply asking the question, okay, we're doing this. What's the pattern that is coming up that I'm repeating here, that when I, like, and at the core, and this is something that is really central to my work, is this invitation to really put the question forward and the answer and the solution back. And this is not just a gimmicky statement. This is a fundamental shift in how we do things together, because the minute we become a community of inquirers that start with not knowing, with saying, we're just questioning because actually this is too complex for any of us to have an answer that would be lasting or would be the right one. But we all might have pieces of the answer. So again, you bring in worldview in a much more multidimensional way, and you bring in the humility to say, let's slow this down and listen. But then at the same time, because you know that we're participants in the process, we can't but interfere with it. So doing nothing would also be a form of intervention. And then really engaging a community around listening to the land and implementing is just a deeply different pathway than saying who's got the best answer, who's got the best solution, because then people start arguing with each other. Because then one solution, like and this is very related to how we see the future and the direction of travel. If we continue in our languaging to build an idea that there is a sustainable future or a regenerative culture or a regenerative future that we can arrive at and down tools and live happily ever after, then we look at it as if it's a thing that we just need to build, and then we're there and then everything is fine. If we give up that BS, that mirage, that false assumption that there would ever be a place that we could arrive like that, we start traveling in a different way, because we understand that the traveling is the journey, like the journey is the goal. And then if we do so in a spirit of questioning together how to do this wisely with the future generations in mind, then we walk into the future in a whole different way. And it's a way that allows diversity. Suddenly, if everybody says, here's my piece that I would say would be an answer to this question we're currently working on, and you stand them next to each other, it's like an Indigenous Elders Council. At the end, you don't necessarily need to come down that somebody on the flip charts puts the 3 bullet points down and says, that's what we're going to do now. No, by listening to the wisdom of the crowd, we all, from the inside out, know more clearly in what direction we need to go. And then there's other meetings that might be more of the other type that start creating lists and to-do lists, and because of course we need solutions and we need implementation and we need to try things out. But that's where it comes to scale, and that's a whole nother conversation on at what scale do we build what system. Hugo, sorry, now I got into a long speech.
Great conversation. From what sprout in me from hearing you is this action of unlearning, learning a lot of our patterns that we've been repeating. And as you were mentioning, that it's not an individual answer of what is the worldview that is going to come. It's not like an individual. We will not be able to even perceive what that worldview is going to be. So what what we try to propose here is that we go for several cycles of connection that puts us in contact and in silence and in introspection and outerspection, that gives us these movement from allowing the voice of the earth to actually be spoken, and to allow that voice to be heard. And before that, we need to really, as you were mentioning, humble ourselves and really start unlearning a lot of the things that don't allow us to hear. And so, going back to tools, what if in my drive, like, I would say that the ultimate drive would not be to need a tool, but to get to that state, we need tools to unlearn, because we've learned how to use tools. So now it could be an interesting way to reverse that learning journey, to just use them to go out, use them to not get stuck on the tools, but to actually get and quiet enough that we are able to hear the voice and act from that place.
But
that reminds very much of sorry, Daniel, it reminds me very much of one of my key teachers in participatory learning, Paulo Freire, saying that every word contains two aspects. One aspect is reflection, the other one is action. If you utilize the word and emphasize reflection over action, that will become rhetoric, because you become really, you clinging to the ideas. But if you do the other way around, if you take the word and emphasize action over reflection, you have an activation in society that is only at surface. You don't go to the deep questions. So this balance between reflection and action, and worldview, policy, and solution, is like a different axis that we need to work. There's one axis here, because basically when you think about the SDG, they are, is a constellation of policies to guide humanity towards a pathway, a sustainable pathway that suddenly was like an international consensus. So, but these policies, and policies are about solutions. Policies are embodied when they're grounded and they bring new directions. So if you have the worldview informing that, with the deep questioning that Daniel has, articulated, and a balance between reflection and action, because only reflection we won't get there, only action, I can sit for hours in circles, but at a certain stage, I need to go to Cune Bagerha at the south of, because the women there, the soil is too salinated. They're not growing any more food. And in 3 months, they're going to have another hurricane. And I can feel all the log frames of my donor, and I can have all the circle, but I need to go and get and start growing food vertically. I need to start doing things as well, not so much questioning, but there is this aspect that action is needed as well. So let's balance both. Yes, Daniel.
Now, just wanting to pick up and build on both of you briefly. Yeah, thanks for bringing in that balance. That's why I briefly mentioned earlier that the dilemma navigation. It's an insight that I had only recently talking with friends in the H3 Uni network, that very often we make the mistake of thinking there's an either or decision, action or reflection, when truly both are needed. And so what we need to do is navigate the dilemma of giving energy to both in due time. And in a similar way, when Hugo was speaking, yes, there's a lot of unlearning to be done, because, or at least I would say, becoming conscious of how strongly our organizing ideas and mental models actually shape reality, and then evaluating which serve and which don't serve. The danger of to just bring in the balance with the unlearning is there's lots to unlearn, but there's also wonderful, deep knowledge, both ancient, but also of the last 250 years of science and technology that is useful. And the danger that when we look, how do we go through cultural shifts or so-called paradigm shifts, we very often throw out the baby with the bathwater. And I've said this many times, but I feel it's really important to highlight that let's not oversteer the pendulum. Like right now, we're on this nice edge. How do you value science as a way of seeing that is extremely useful and powerful and does give a kind of information on certain aspects of reality that we should base key decisions on, and at the same time allow in other voices and other ways of knowing, and not swing over to almost dismiss science, that we then get that fuzzy, weird situation that Donald Trump has created in the US, where people don't know what facts to believe anymore. So for me, it's always this question of, as we build the new, to really carefully look at what we're letting go of, not in a sort of, we're moving from this to that, but in a, what in this is valuable that can be transformed, transmuted to be still part of the future we want to co-create. And rather than dismiss everything of the past. And I'm not saying you said that, Ugo, it's just that in the unlearning narrative, it can sometimes look like, let's forget everything we've got. And some of the things are useful. The problem that we had as a civilization is that we called the age-old wisdom of how to live in place as expressions of place and custodians and guardians of places that all indigenous people who lived bioregionally all over the world had. We dismissed that as primitive. And that was a major throwing out the baby with the bathwater. And I think we're now beginning to see how valuable that core wisdom of humanity, of how to participate appropriately, actually is for our moving into the future together.
By the way, there has been amazing comments from the chat. I'm not sure if you are accompanying, but just catching one from Andy. This sounds very much like two-eyed seeing both science and indigenous natural wisdom. So there's been, I mean, I'm not sure if you are accompanying that. That's really, really important. So we have 10 more minutes of conversation here, although we've been disrupted in the beginning, but we are fully here. I would like to really go back into the SDG cards and the We Land a little bit before we go to a much more like personal view of it. So is anything else that you want to add on the We Land tool? I mean, where do we find it? You know, how to apply, who is the best public to use it? Anything like in 2-3 minutes about the We Land.
So just connecting with what you were saying about the reflective aspect and the action, like the reason we choose to use the toroidal vortex is that the first phase of the toroidal vortex is very much into reflection. And once there's clarity, that pulls into some kind of presence, that an emergence that then informs action. And these can happen in multiple action fronts and reflection fronts, and at different scales. It can be happening at different scales. And also another thing that, you know, what Daniel was saying, and also the comment that you just mentioned, like we also looked into integral theory to also look into how to integrate the more subjective aspects and objective aspects as practices, both in the reflection and in the action. So just to give an example, on the first phase, on connecting to land, you could have exercises like place story tracking, to track the story of the place, or things like introduce yourself to the land, and you get a connection there. But also a topographic survey, a drone flying out and mapping your territory, so that you also have that objective, more systemic practice, also part of the perception raising of that particular land. And then, so that would be the starting point, would be to connect to the land both subjectively and objectively, and then go forward with connection with the community you're involved, again subjectively and objectively, until you get to an identity. And once you get this identity and you name this identity, it's when you then get clarity for the co-designing phase, and you start on the acting phase. And once again, you connect both objectively or subjectively. And what we are aiming is that these can stimulate the emergence of regenerative livelihoods, of livelihoods that sprout out from the ground and sprout out from place. To connect it with the SDG and to the narrative of the SDG, this project that we just now finalized, this Community Catalysts project, and you can check more of it on catalysts.community, and you have the tools to download, you have the guidelines there. The tweak that was present in this project was, okay, so how do we start with the open door that Daniel was mentioning of the SDG in terms of a communication? How do you start there? And from there, doing a PAR process and finding the catalysts that are involved in that particular SDG. How then can you start going into your place and finding these cycles of regenerative action from place with an overall narrative and an overall view of the SDGs? So you have more information on catalysts.community, and about the Willand, you have also on willand.design. And
it's important to say this is a Commons tool, so you're going to get an email tomorrow with a link. So if you didn't get right now, and so you can download and start using. But maybe Daniel, you have 2 minutes to say a little bit more about the flashcards. Would be great.
And here's one of them, for example. And that's what they look like. There are 61 of them, 51 of them are about specific SDGs. So there's 3 cards for each one of the 17 SDGs. They all have a similar structure. That in the white boxes you can see here, and here. There's some background information on coming in already through the 4 dimensions of social, ecological, worldview, and economic. And then in the colorful boxes are a series of questions that invite you to reflect. Normally they have a similar structure of kind of, what does this SDG mean to you in this place? What do you know that is already happening in this place that is either consciously or unconsciously related to implementing that SDG, moving things forward in that field? And what are the low-hanging fruits in terms of projects you could imagine here? But then there are also questions in worldview or in other parts of the mandala that invite you into reflecting, what could you do for other people in other places to help implement this SDG? And there's constantly an invitation to interlink between SDGs, and a reminder to not see the SDGs in silos, to not fall into the pattern of picking the 3 favorite ones that you then only focus on, and then you'll get to the next ones later. No, they are meant to be implemented systemically. And they come with a set of, like, from guyeducation.org, you can order the cards in 8 languages. You can download a training of multiplier manual. You can do one of those trainings, but there's also one to download that explains how to run a workshop that is either half a day or whole day. And May and I developed all of this together. And these workshops have been held all over the world. There are over 1,000 of trained multipliers. But the idea when we created these cards was a little bit like, could they be like a analog viral spread? So anybody who'd done half a day or a day workshop and was holding a set of cards in his hand or her hand and had the manual that described the half day and the whole day workshop would feel the confidence that, because the workshop is so based on the cards and it's done step by step, that anybody with a little bit of teaching capacity or experience could basically feel confident to say, I can take this to my community group, into my business, to a school, to a university, to begin a conversation locally. And then as you crystallize the people out that really want to do deep grounded work locally, you look up the websites that Hugo just gave you and go a lot deeper. I'm excited about this tool you developed, Hugo. It's fantastic. And it was wonderful to see the very first inkling of it at Schumacher College a few years ago.
Wonderful. So I thank you very much, the two of you, for introducing the tools. I hope that has ignited your interest, those who are here. I understand we had 95 people in and out, but we have about 85 people listening to us right now, which we're very, very thankful. But we haven't closed yet. Can you put us back? Because I want to ask, please, Hugo, where do you trace, both of you, where do you trace? Let's close with the personal kind of sharing. Where do you trace the earliest roots of your passion for this conversation today? In 2-3 phrases, is not to tell the story of your life. Where do you trace the earliest roots of the passion behind this conversation and the tools and all that you do in the world? I think you're muted.
Am I muted?
No, no more.
No, okay. So if I have to start with where to trace, that's always difficult, because tracking something, it's like a full combination of you know, what are the beliefs that we're breaking, and what is the paw that is left on the ground. So it's not a straightforward thing, but I would have to say that it's very alive in me, the moments that I worked as a marine biology, as like a skipper in whale watching companies, and to be really embedded in open ocean with amazing animals and amazing beings, and acknowledging the disconnection that was present on the people that were actually going to see them, and to see that disconnection was the cause that was making them to suffer. And both, when I say them, I say both, like both the animals and the people on the boat. So I think if I had to trace something that really, you know, like really touched me, to go inland and go look for solutions inland to solve, you know, and solve or be part of the re-education and relearning of all these connectedness.
Thank you.
I think it was from there.
Thank you very much. We honor your pathway, your path of service, and Daniel, think rhizomatically. Don't one event. Tell just one thing.
This was interesting, because what Hugo said reminded me that I'm beginning to track a pattern among some people who are working in the regenerative field. Tom Duncan in Australia is another one, of former marine biologists having moments that actually had a direct connection with working with marine mammals, to coming to that point of saying the best way to serve these brothers and sisters is to actually work with my brothers and sisters, my species, and become of service to them. And a few, like last year, I was invited to become a member of the dolphin embassy in the Canary Islands, and met at a conference lots of people that told a similar story. And there's a beautiful documentary called Interterrestrial Connection, where the idea is brought up that these complex living beings are inviting us to step up and take the role we need to take seriously, which is that we are life, and as life we can create conditions conducive to life. As Joanna Macy reminded me many years ago, when we step up and speak up for life and for the regenerative impulse, we're speaking with the authority of 3.8 billion years of evolution. This is life speaking, saying it's time to build a new relationship to life. And it's lovely to have two compañeros en el camino, to friends in the work.
Thank you very much, Daniel. Thank you very much, Hugo, and all those who are here. I'm going to put a song, the same song that has opened, will close. And as you go out, but also you can put some more comments. We're going to leave the room open 5 more minutes. And this recording is going to be available if you want to share with your friends, and check WeLand and check the SDG cards. Thank you for the Gaia team to the EU, who has supported the We Land, and for the partnership of UNESCO ESD as well for supporting the SDG cards. See you next time. And here's the sea and the sisters and brothers of the sea. Happy birthday, Daniel. Happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you. It was a bit of a tight arriving, but we made it. I'm so glad that I somehow found a way. It was so frustrating to listen to Hugo and say, I can't join. But yeah, wonderful. All worked out.
Thank you.
Lovely to see you both. Right. I'm going to go and celebrate with my little one. Yeah.
Gaia team, can you open and we can see everybody who is in the screen? Let's say goodbye to everybody and wave goodbye to Daniel as well, because it's his birthday.
Underneath the sea, can you hear the thousand mile melody coming from a distant radio, calling from afar, calling through ocean channels, saying,